Martin Gonzalez is the best-selling author of The Bonfire Moment. He is a Google Leadership and Org Development Principal. He is a Stanford Lecturer, amongst many other things. Welcome to the show, Martin.
Thanks for having me, George. Great to be
Excited to
here.
have you on. Tell us a little bit about your personal lives, more about your work, and why you do what you do.
So I think of my work in three platforms, if you will. So the first one is the core work I do at Google. I work very closely with our senior leadership teams. Many of them are in the AI research and engineering spaces to help them really think through some of their most strategic people and organizational challenges. I tell my team that I think of our work as like the business equivalent of the CIA, where we work on really high stakes issues. And when we do our jobs well, things are better, but no one will know that we were ever there. And so a lot of our work is really behind closed doors and trying to really help leaders think through, do we have the right capabilities? Do we have the right people in the right places? Do we have the right culture to be successful? The second part of this portfolio career I have is I do a lot of work with startups. Early in my time, I've been at Google for about 10 years. Early in my time, I did what we would call a 20% project, a chance to work on like a pet project you're really passionate about. And my 20% project was helping Josh Yellen, my co-author, build up the accelerator program that had scaled across the world. And in that work, I had offered just some help to build out the people and culture curriculum for this accelerator. Well, it turns out that over the course of the many years, the workshop we had built to help founders really wrestle with a lot of the people, relationship, and cultural issues in their teams, um, took a life of its own, felt very, very useful for a lot of founders, and it had reached founders in about 70 countries, which then has led to this book that we'll talk about today, The Bonfire Moment. The last part, this third part of my portfolio career is really teaching. I come from a line of teachers. My grandparents, my uncles and aunts, all teachers. So it's very much a part of my DNA to want to be in the classroom and to give back to the next generation. And so I find myself quite often in classrooms. My primary affiliation is with Stanford, but I also teach at Wharton and INSEAD, which is a French-based school. And that's it. That's me. I'm a father of three kids. I have recently started to call myself a serial immigrant. I was born in the Philippines, and about 15 or so years ago, had a good fortune of moving to New York for school, lived in Jakarta, Singapore, Taiwan for work, and about 4 years ago, moved out here to the Bay Area to be at our headquarters here at Google.
What is it that makes you a successful serial immigrant?
Just the just the appeal of the wide open road and the thought that there's adventure to be had. Also, a partner who's incredibly supportive of these wild ideas of uprooting and exploring new places. I've just really loved it. I think, a lot of immigrants will tell you that resilience and resourcefulness and being creative with your limited resources is all a shared characters among a lot of immigrants.
And I would have to think that there's crossover through lines when it comes to, starting a new enterprise and what it takes to bring culture together. You're taking your family to new places, and it takes
Yeah,
those things that you just described. You need to be scrappy and resilient and make the most of your
yeah.
resources. And
Yes, indeed. All of that, George. It's yeah, raising a family in what is it now, 4 or 5 countries is definitely an intense startup-like environment that we create.
for sure, for sure, for sure. And it is for sure a zero options kind of a deal, because what are
Yeah.
we're certainly not going to stop being a family, so we need to make this thing work.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Indeed, indeed. Yeah.
So when you talk about working with founders, making sure that they have the right people, the right culture. How do you define what right is, or how do you help them to define that?
Yeah, well, first of all, a lot of our work is anchored on a really classic study out of Harvard that found that 65% of startups fail because of people issues. And so that becomes the first reality, which is, left your own devices, you are likely to fail because of the people related challenges in your startup. And so the promise that we make in the book is less about this will make you wildly successful, but more this will at the very least, de-risk your best ideas. What does success look like? A successful startup or a startup that is poised towards, succeeding or not failing because of the people issues. One of the number one things that founders get wrong is that they grab at their friends or their family to be their partners in crime as they build the company. And we know from the data that building a company with friends and family, that is the most unstable relationship possible. The reason for that is, this relationship is a very expensive relationship. Not only is it, a personal relationship, but you're layering over that a professional relationship. So in some senses, you want to figure out, how do I create the right conditions where we're able to really have the tough conversations, that we're able to put some extent the relationship on the line in service of the business. And if I'm not ready to do that, then perhaps I should be, founding the company with perhaps cheaper, so to speak, relationships. Perhaps, and we know from the data that, it's people who are acquaintances or people who are former coworkers where there's a lot more stability in those partnerships.
Why is it that we're attracted to friends and family? Is it just known quantities?
Yeah, a lot of it is very ambitious young founders will typically only have a pitch deck and not a lot of credential or traction in their product. And so the only people who are ready to go along with them on this crazy journey are people who already know and love them. So friends or family. I think it's a very classic mistake, and I wouldn't say it's a right out mistake. So if you're listening to this and this is the configuration of your team, it just simply means you need to work doubly hard to create those conditions. We know there are a lot of companies that have succeeded really wildly that have this configuration, but then there's a graveyard of many, many more where this was the starting point and things blew up. So I think it's really expediency at the end of the day that people, look to friends and family to start companies.
That certainly makes sense. Very, very human thing. So,
Yeah, yeah,
and it also makes sense because there's not necessarily a ton of time. I don't have an infinite amount of time to spend developing my team, but that's the chicken or the egg.
yeah. And it's the first people you go to ask if this is a good idea are usually that buddy of yours that you hang out with on weekends or, your spouse, and it's easy for them to get excited and to say it's a good idea when really asking your friend is probably the worst way to validate an idea because they'll say nice things. Um, and then it's very easy for them to just then say, okay, I'll come along with you. And look, this is relevant not just for founders, but also for leaders within companies where, how often do we think about staffing up this new team I need to build with people I'm very familiar with. And it's part of the human condition to reach for the familiar, as opposed to really go through the hard work of assessing across multiple, options, who might be the best person for the job. And so you want to, we talk in the book about the trap of speed, where, a lot of these big initiatives or these initiatives that really start with very ambitious goals without a lot of resources, it's very dangerous to get really, brought into this, to this narrative of speed is king and that speed is everything. In many ways, this is true. Like you're under limited funding. You want to keep your burn rate down. You want to, make sure you turn a profit as soon as possible. But as a result, what tends to happen is that entrepreneurs will get sloppy on some really important decisions on day one that will really mean a world of pain, years from now, if and when they get big. And so we want, we tell founders, like, be careful about certain things. And one of them is who you co-found with. Another one is how you hire. Getting sloppy on hiring will mean a lot of cleanup and a lot of, like, you know, a lot of pain, whether it's financial or cultural, that you will experience down the line. And many other things. Yeah.
Yeah, massive costs to making a wrong hire, probably far beyond just having them there for the amount of time that they're there. So I appreciate
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
It's fascinating why a message gets so much traction or why some messages don't at all. You're doing this in 70 countries and across, I'm sure, many different industries. What
Mhm.
what is it that you think has made this message successful?
I think in many ways it's that this population of founders, who, by the way, I really enjoy spending time with, because these are truly the dreamers who are trying to build something kind of new for the world. They will move society forward with their inventions, for good or for bad. Um, I think they come into this work obsessing over the product. They think, I'm going to build a really elegant solution and we're going to disrupt industries, and it becomes an afterthought to them that, oh, so when we get successful, I need to build a company around this product. And I think it's the founder who is just so intensely focused on building the product that they create these really intense environments for the people around them. So this workshop that we've built, it's a 1 day workshop which we actually open source through the book. We all the Not just the tools are shared there, but also kind of a very clear, like, agenda for the day, and a step by step, like, how do you actually run this for your teams. It's all captured in this book. I think this 1 day is a gift to a lot of them, because they never have protected thinking time and protected time to really deal with some of these issues. On top of that, we know that these are some of the most painful parts of the journey. We start the book with a quote from Bill Curran, who used to be a very senior leader at Google, is currently a partner in Sequoia Capital, one of the premier venture capitalists in the world. I mean, he says engineering is easy, people are hard. And it flies in the face of popular belief that, the people stuff, these are, it's not rocket science, right? Like, we should actually spend a lot of our thinking time on rocket science, but this one isn't rocket science. Well, we write in the book, the irony of that statement is that as a society, as a civilization, we're incredibly good at rocket science. We can actually launch someone on the moon and land within a very small margin of error. Whereas when it comes to people, oftentimes it's so hard to understand why people behave a certain way. And so this message and this workshop, and the message that the workshop delivers, giving people a time and space and a structured way to think about the very difficult parts of the journey that maybe aren't the most sexy parts of the work. I think people really grab at it and find a lot of value in it.
I certainly imagine. And that's not easy. I can't imagine it was easy to boil everything and distill it down to a day. I'm sure that you could have made this a month-long program.
For sure. And George, I in my field, I'm a practitioner in this space. And when I first came into this work, I thought we're going to build some really sophisticated tools. It's going to be completely path breaking. And it turns out that as we were trialing all these many ways of really bringing people into this thinking and having a more considered approach to the people and culture elements of their business, it turns out a lot of the most simple, basic tools were the ones that resonated the most. For instance, we ask folks to, I'll give you two examples. One, we ask folks to write up what we call a user guide. It's not a term that we created. It's something that is really popular within the walls of Google, where leaders we'll write up, if when you buy a printer or a phone, it comes with a user guide, how to install it, uninstall it, troubleshoot it. Well, let me write up a user guide for myself. This is why I'm here. This is how, I tend to work really well. If we get into conflict, this is how you resolve it with me. This is how I prefer to receive and give feedback. These are the things that will really disengage me from the work. It's these kinds of questions we ask people to write up and then just share across the team. And somehow this becomes like a really revelatory moment for team members. That's the first one. The second example is one of the parts of the workshop that I have a lot of amour for is this thing we call the bullshit circle. And the bullshit circle really is premised on this idea that when you are out to do really bold and ambitious things, self-doubt and insecurity are going to be your companion along the way. And where a lot of founders tend to believe that as I get better at this work, my self-confidence will rise. Actually, our data on founders around the world shows almost nearly the opposite, which is, your confidence is highest at the beginning of the journey. You almost require it. If you knew exactly what it would take to succeed, you would not even begin. And as you start to do the work and you realize what the gold standard looks like and how far you are from it, then self-doubt really creeps in, and all these setbacks, which are inevitable in the journey, will almost tempt you to throw in the towel. And we tell founders, look, one, that's more a signal of growth than it is a signal of future failure. And then two, in this bullshit circle, we invite founders to just have real talk and say, and have them, reflect and then share, what are the biggest insecurities you bring to the work, and how does this maybe show up? What masks do you wear that create toxic environments for your teams? And it's these two things, and things similar and as simple as that, that really give founders, a lot of, they find a home in these workshops, and they share it with a lot of people. And this is why we wrote the book, because at some point when we were going back to these countries where we initially seeded the program, founders would come back and say, hey, I hope you don't mind. I ran my own bootleg version of this to a bunch of other founders, and they found it really useful. So thank you. And we thought, well, we might as well help you do it well through the book.
You're right. That isn't necessarily intuitive, but when you lay it out, it makes total sense. That
Yeah.
is it a function of I would rather try and tackle a perceived product or engineering or design problem than crawl inside my own head because that's scarier inside my own head, kind of a thing.
Yeah, and we talk about how, unlike code, when you have a buggy code, you can put your head down, find the bug, and debug it. People are so buggy, and there's so much more about the human condition that you could find a bunch of bugs and try to debug that, but then the next morning you'll find more. And so there's something about um, the human condition that I think is infinitely more complex than doing engineering.
I just that resonates with me so much because I certainly know it's true, and I've experienced that across so
Yeah,
many different domains. So that it resonates with people and it's exciting and that they're trying to replicate it, it just makes so much sense to me. So
yeah.
the book has been out since May and has how has it been? Looking back, are you happy with everything and how it turned out?
So we've been very happy with the reception. But George, when Josh and I set out to write this book, really our main focus was, can we get these useful ideas and tools into the hands of, entrepreneurs around the world? And where before access to this was really limited to whether you got into the Google Accelerator program or not, like now it's kind of open to, really to the rest of the world. And despite hitting bestseller lists and, really getting all this accolades for it, really we're just focused on making sure we get the message out, and and get this into as many translations as possible. So, we're having a Chinese version coming out at some point next year, a Korean, a Mexican, and we hope to, a Spanish, I should say, and we're hoping to get it into more languages, even Bahasa Indonesia's one, Portuguese as well, because Brazil is a really big market for for startups. So we're happy and we're excited about all the accolades we've received through for the book, but we feel like there's just still so much more work to be done.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Never ending, Martin.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you so much for the work that you're doing. Where can people learn more about you? How can they engage, and where can they get their copy of The Bonfire Moment?
So the book should be available anywhere you like to buy books. Bonfiremoment.com is our website where you can learn a lot more about the workshop, about the book. We have a bunch of really good videos in there. And Josh and I are also active on LinkedIn. So come and reach out, connect with us, follow us, and we'll be happy to answer any questions you might have. Drop us a message.
Excellent. Well, if you enjoyed this as much as I did, show Martin your appreciation and share today's show with a friend who also appreciates good ideas. Go to bonfiremoment.com and learn more about the workshops that Martin has been talking about. Check out the great video content. You could find Martin and his co-author. What is the full name of your co-author, Martin?
Joshua Yellen.
Joshua Yellen on LinkedIn, and pick up your copy of Bonfire Moment wherever you like to buy your books. Thanks again, Martin.
Great. Thanks for having me, George.
Until next time, remember, do your part by doing your best.